Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Casting Angles with Mac Brown. Mac, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Marvin?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble, and you were telling me before we started recording you're a little bit disappointed the weatherman didn't quite get it right this weekend.
He really didn't. We're supposed to have a deluge of water again, and I mean, it hasn't even... I think they were predicting like Thursday last week, 5 and 6 inches. And I mean, we've had maybe just enough to wet the patio. So I'm kind of glad we've had our share of floods, you know, so it's kind of nice. We don't really need a bunch more floods going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're kind of heading into a transition time of year. Like fishing is really good, but you know, I guess we've got probably 2 weeks until DH burns off. And then we're going to start to, at some point kind of march into the dog days of summer, right?
Oh, yeah, it's coming. But we've been really cool as far as the temps. You know, we've been really a lot cooler than normal for May. I think last week we had 2 days in the low 40s. And I think one of those days I talked to a guy on the radio up in New Hampshire, and this really surprised me to be at the end of May. And it talked about Mount Washington being like 5 degrees and snowing. And I thought, wow. Because Mount Washington's not near as high as the mountains, you know, around the house here. So it gets some pretty harsh weather, though. So, yeah, we're ready for some warm temperatures, though.
Yeah, so it's going to warm up. I think that was the kind of a nor'easter that kind of whipped through, and that's why our weather's been kind of cool and funky, too. But you were telling me that as you would expect, you know, probably water temperatures probably in the high 50s, maybe low 60s, kind of depending on where you are, is probably really, really good kind of dry dropper action.
Yeah, that's what's been the ticket the last few weeks. We're still doing a lot of dry dropper. And, of course, with all these cloudy days, we've had a lot of fish up, like really up in the column. So the dropper's not really that far away from the dry. You know, it's like 16 inches to 12 inches away. I mean, somewhere in that neighborhood seems to work really well when the hatches get rolling. And, yeah, that's been the ticket. That's been probably the most productive thing I've seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's going to continue to kind of work throughout the summer. It just may get a little bit tougher, you know, because once it starts, DH in most places, give folks a couple weeks and they're going to clean out most of those fish, right? And then you're going to have either educated, DH fish or wild fish, and then it's going to get low and clear and hot, right?
Yeah, then it'll be going back down deep, of course, fishing early. Like I wish there's just no way to do it, but I wish we'd go to some hoot owl stuff here, you know, like when it gets hot. Cause I mean, we're done. Like the trips we do in the summer, we're at the door daylight and we're done by like 10:30. So it's like, but you can't really tell everybody to do that. But, you know, a lot of people want to wake up on vacation and start at 10 and finish at 4. And that's just a recipe for disaster. You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to do well in the summer, as soon as the water temp hits about 68 degrees, it's probably best to quit, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you start late like that, by the time you kind of get everybody in the boat and, tell them which way to point the rod, it's kind of you're fishing in the worst part of the day.
That's it. And it's like, I kind of like the early morning. I like the early morning stuff on the water. I mean, that's probably my favorite. That's some of my favorite. And it's not that it's bad in the summer. You just got to go at the right time. People always ask, is it a lot worse? And I'm like, well, no, it can be really good to you in the summer. It's just, you got to go when the fish are going to be happy, and that's early in the morning.
Yeah, I would say, in the summertime, we're talking dry dropper. Probably my, favorite rig is probably an elk hair caddis and a soft hackle pheasant tail.
Mm-hmm. That'd be a good one. I mean, that would be definitely a good one. And of course, the terrestrial game will start to get bigger too as we get into late June, July. But yeah, we're going to be in a big transition here the next few weeks. It's not going to be the easy fishing we've had. I mean, you're going to have to work harder for them when it gets into, into June, July. You're going to have to be doing exactly what they want. Right now, we've been able to get away with a lot of stuff, dry dropper, and we're not very selective on the nymphs, just as long as it's something that looks buggy. It's been working fine, and it's like it'll start to be more selective here the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. I always kind of think, too, that, particularly like a small black beetle is kind of my change up on really selective fish, like fish in the South Holston or the Watauga,
Mm-hmm.
and because I think it's something a lot of people don't think to kind of throw at them. I tell you, another good one for me is a big June bug.
Oh yeah, we like the June bugs a lot too, and that works really well on these park streams like the freestones up here. And we throw a lot of beetles, and we throw a lot of inchworms, of course, and everybody has all this hopper mentality from Western England, and they all come here and think they're going to throw a big hopper, and it's like it's just very few places in Appalachia. It's not like Iowa or the Wisconsin or Illinois around the driftless where you got all these hoppers sitting in grass. How many hoppers you see in the woods? Very, very rare. So, like my field has them. I've got 8 acres of pasture around the house, and of course we got them here, but unfortunately there's not a trout stream flows by my house. So, yeah, the hopper thing is overrated in Appalachia, I think, is what I'm saying. It's a Western thing.
Yeah, I think part of it comes back to, it's just kind of people paying attention and matching the hatch. And it's kind of like, even if you're out west, if you're walking to the water and you're not moving a lot of grasshoppers, you might not want to fish a hopper, right?
That's right. But there's times out west, of course, they fly like, hundreds of birds coming off the grass with the hoppers. I mean, when it's like that, it's probably a good time to do it too. So, yeah, but we just don't have a lot of them. We have them here around the pasture, but like I say, most of the stuff that I work on out of the Forest Service or Park Service land, there's not any pastures up there in the national park that flow along the creeks, So it's definitely inchworm is king in this part of the country. I mean, there's close to 500 varieties of inchworms here in Appalachia. So that's a way more common food source to fish that live back in the woods,
Yeah. How do you feel about crickets and ants?
I like ants a lot. Of course, I like crickets from as a kid, We used to fish a lot of crickets when I was growing up. But ants, I use a lot of ants. Black ant and cinnamon colored ants. I mean, I tie a lot of ants, and I've done really well with ants that are like fishing them underneath. Like I used to fish a lot of ants come June and July where I'd have a floating ant on top, dry dropper, and then I'd have one that sinks underneath, and I'd be fishing 2 ants, at the same time. So ants can be really productive because there's a lot of big, like carpenter ants and stuff up in the park too with decaying wood matter and stuff, and they'll fall in the stream pretty common. And fish definitely know what the ants are,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, I have, I usually try to carry some beetles that aren't like made out of foam because I think sinking beetles, particularly June bugs, works really well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would. Yeah, I like terrestrial season a great deal. I mean, that's one thing I really do enjoy when it turns to summer because we're not going to have, there's really not a whole lot of per se hatches that are pouring off like this time of year already. I mean, if we went north, drove a good ways north, I mean, they still got a lot of great hatches going on up north of us, but our hatch season's pretty much coming to a close for the most part until next fall. When it cools off, it'll be a terrestrial game for the next bunch of months. You'll see a few bugs here and there like isoperla stones, and there'll be a handful of things that are, I wouldn't really call that a hatch though, because most of the stones are coming off at nighttime. You might see some fluttering about laying eggs and things, but you're not going to see like prolific mayfly hatches and things on a freestone this time of year.
Yeah, it's interesting too, right? So, we're, depending on where you are in the country, some kids are already out of school. Kids are getting ready to get out of school. I think you're telling me Duncan's going to be out of school, middle of this week. I think my youngest son's in school for 2 more weeks, maybe. And then it's going to be kind of crazy. So you're going to be guiding and doing stuff like that too. And if I remember correctly, you don't have any schools kind of until the fall, right?
That's right. The next one that we do will be the 2-day weekend school, like in September, and then we have a couple of 5-day schools that are going on October, November, and then we got the one in Arkansas with Davy for the wet fly school, the clinic, and Mountain Home. And I think that's really the only 4 things that coming up, like in the fall, are those 4. So we're looking forward to all of those because I'm really looking forward to getting back to Mountain Home.
Yeah, and then get some folks in. I know you've got some trips planned this summer too, but get some folks to come out and fish with you, get in the boat or hike up high with you if they're up for that.
Oh yeah, that's always fun going up high, when it gets warmer like that. I'm really excited. I get to take Duncan. He gets done on Wednesday, and we're going to go up and stay 4 or 5 days up high, about 3 hours in, walking in. And so that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be a good way to celebrate being done with school and getting ready to become a junior. He's going to be a junior in high school. So time's going fast, Marvin.
It happens that way. I think, the last time we spoke, I think I'd just gotten back from my oldest son's graduation, and he was the one that, from Carolina, and he's the one that was talking all that junk when he was like 8 years old in Raleigh at the fly fishing show.
Yeah, I remember well. Yeah, that's hard to believe that he's graduated college already. And congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, he'll be 23 in September. It's kind of crazy, but I remember he was talking junk to you, and I was just watching him, and I thought you were going to swallow your dip.
Yeah, he was funny. I remember he was full of himself at that age.
Yeah, he's changed a little bit, but maybe not that much. But as folks already know, if they listen regularly, that they need to go to Mac Brown Fly Fish for all the information. And probably the best thing to do is to call you, text you, or shoot you an email if they want to get in touch and get on the boat or hike up in the park this summer. And folks, we've got kind of a little bit of a break here in the Southeast. It isn't going to stay cool like this and wet, and it won't take very many weeks of hot, no rain, to basically dry things up and, move us on to the warm water fish for the rest of the summer. So as I always say, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Mac.
Tight lines, Marvin.